Cornhusker Huddle. I am your host, Brian Moore. Today we're going to be recapping the offensive line, the running backs room performance in the Pinstripe Bowl. We're also going to be going over where those positions sit and how they look going into the 2025 season. But first, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. We'll call it the first show jitters. I somehow left off Carter Nelson from the tight end room discussion in yesterday's video. So we're going to address that for a minute here, and then we'll get into the offensive line, into the running backs. So Carter Nelson came in, highly sought after, consensus 4-star recruit. I think he was the number 1 or number 2 tight end ranked nationally. Played 8-man football in high school. He's being recruited by Nebraska, Georgia, Alabama, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, USC, you name it. Every elite Power 4 school was after him. In fact, Nick Saban said that watching Carter Nelson's high school film was the first time he'd ever watched 8-man football in his entire career. Carter Nelson played in every game this season. He played primarily on special teams, on kickoff coverage, and he played about 5, 8, maybe 10 snaps a game on the offensive side of the ball. He had a small group of plays that he knew every week, I'm going to run these plays on this game. And they got him the ball a handful of times on those plays. He had decent production for a guy coming in playing 8-man football a season ago. Now, they did announce that he is making that full-time switch to tight end going into next season. So you're going to have potentially Thomas Fidone back. You're going to have Heinrich Harburg, Luke Lindenmeyer, Carter Nelson, and Mac Markway. So you got a you got a really good solid group of tight ends. And Carter's going to find his spot in there somewhere. I see him being a very similar spot as Heinrich Harburg, where they're going to be that Travis Kelce role. They're not going to be an inline tight end with a hand in the dirt. They're going to be the guys that are out in the slots getting a mismatch on a linebacker, getting a mismatch on a safety, or whoever's covering them. All right, let's take a look at the offensive line. So for the bowl game, I thought they performed at a really high level. Nebraska had 31 dropbacks. And on those 31 dropbacks, Boston College blitzed 20 times. They only gave up 4 pressures on those 20 blitzes of the 31 dropbacks. And they gave up 1 sack, which per Pro Football Focus, that sack actually gets credited to Ramir Johnson because he missed his block. At left tackle, I love the way Gunnar Gatula has played this season after being thrusted into the starting role. After initially Teddy Prohaska went down, Turner Corcoran went down, we are now down to our 3rd string left tackle. I thought he played admirably and got better as the year went on. I think he is going to be your bookend left tackle for years to come. They've got a lot of guys in the system that are younger right now that came in from last year's class and even the class before. So we're seeing those guys develop right now. I'm glad we haven't thrusted them into starting action other than the Gunnar Gatula situation, because that's something Nebraska has had a huge problem with going even before Rule, before Frost. It's always been a problem where they have these young guys coming in on the O-line and they're putting these 18, 19-year-olds that are in their 1st or 2nd season of college football up against guys that have been in the systems for 3, 4, or even 5 years. It's not been good. I'm glad we're getting away from that. It's also worth noting that next year's offensive line is going to be primarily everyone that Donovan Raiola has recruited and developed over the last handful of seasons. So I'm really curious to see what his guys look on the offensive line, because right now he's been working with a lot of guys that were not recruited by him. Who's returning? What do we got to work with right now as things sit? We've got Henry Latovsky coming back. Go ahead and pencil him in. He's your starting right guard for next season. Justin Evans-Jenkins returns as well. He's a guy that could slide back over to center where he started his career. It kind of depends on how healthy Turner Corcoran comes back, assuming he does come back next season. It also kind of depends on what they're doing with Teddy Prohaska, because he's had multiple season-ending injuries. So we're going to get to those guys in just a second. And then, like we talked about, we've got Gunnar Gatula coming back as our starting left tackle. I am wondering if it is on Teddy's mind to potentially medically retire from football. I haven't heard anything that would say that. It's just something I've been thinking about as something that could be an option for him. When you're coming off back-to-back season-ending injuries, and someone of his stature who's 6'10", 6'11", they're over 320 pounds, you just have to wonder about the long-term effects of those knee injuries and shoulder injuries, because when he's 30, 35, 40 years old, those are going to come back to him. And I wonder if he's thinking long-term outlook, is it best for me to just call it quits? For Turner, he's had back-to-back season-ending injuries. I'm not thinking he's of the notion that he's going to medically retire. It's just, do I come back or not for Turner? So if Turner does come back, he's not going to be your left tackle next season. At least that's my read on it. I think Gunnar Katula showed enough to stay your starting left tackle, like I've already said. He could be a backup left tackle. He could be a swing guy that plays left guard, right guard, even center. He could be your starting right tackle if we don't land a tackle from the portal, which we're going to cover that here in a little bit. So I think a lot of where Turner plays depends on Justin Evans Jenkins and where the coaching staff feels Sam Sledge is at right now. Really, there's 4 scenarios I see playing out, and I've kind of hinted at them already. Scenario 1 is going to be Justin Evans Jenkins moves back to center, and then you let Sam Sledge and Turner Corcoran play left guard. Sledge could start, Turner could start, they could battle it out, they could rotate it. I don't really care how it works. That could be an option. Option 2 is Sam Sledge stays at center and takes over at center, and Justin Evans Jenkins stays at left guard as your starting left guard, and then Turner is either your backup left guard, backup right guard, backup left tackle, or potentially your starting right tackle. Option 3, Justin Evans Jenkins moves back to center. Nebraska then adds an interior lineman from the portal, and that allows Sam Sledge another year of development, and then that would be in the instance they don't land a right tackle, because then in option number 4 is your wild card. Turner moves to right tackle because Nebraska failed to pick up a starting right tackle in the portal. And personally, Turner and Teddy have not been able to stay healthy for the majority of the last 2 or 3 seasons, so I just don't trust that they're going to have that ability to stay healthy, that they're the players we once thought they were going to be, especially for Turner's sake. He came in with extremely high accolades. He was an Army All-American. He was down to Nebraska, Georgia, and like Alabama, like high-level recruit. And he really hasn't performed at the level we thought we were going to get from him. In terms of the portal and an interior guy they could brought in, I mentioned the Michigan center that they brought in on the first week that the portal was open. From my read, from everything I've heard on other podcasts, is that guy was not a take in terms of because of the financial compensation he was wanting with NIL. Nebraska has plenty of money to spend with 1890. They're also having revenue sharing come in, so it's not like Nebraska wasn't willing to pay for a starting level center. I think they weren't willing to pay his price because he'd only started 5 games in 4 years at Michigan. Missouri, on the other hand, that's where he ended up, is willing to fork out tons of money for everybody. They're going to spend money, and then, like what we're seeing right now, they're losing all these guys to the portal because they just fork out a bunch of money, and some of them don't pan out. Some of them come there to get that bag and dip. So Nebraska just isn't going to do that. They're not going to overspend for a guy that they don't feel is worth that money. Matt Rule comes from the NFL. He understands salary cap. Now, there isn't a salary cap per se quite yet until revenue sharing kicks in, but Nebraska's not going to go pay a guy just to pay a guy. We've got the big right tackle from Washington State. Nebraska has been recruiting him for quite a while now, pretty much since day 0 of entering the portal. He's down to Michigan and Nebraska. He's coming to Nebraska. Don't worry. He is going to be a Husker, and he is going to be your starting right tackle for 2025. The only thing that I think is stopping him from committing is his former O-line coach at Washington State is now the offensive line coach at Wake Forest. So we were originally thinking his timeline was after the Washington State Bowl game, he's going to commit. We're thinking it's going to be this week. So it's Friday, January 3rd. We should hear something on the 3rd, 4th, 5th, maybe even the 6th, but something should be coming soon. The wrench in everything is Wake Forest. He is considering a visit to Wake Forest now that his O-line coach from Washington State is there. That could obviously affect things drastically. For him, it's going to come down to, in his final season, does he want to be somewhere where he's comfortable? Wake Forest is a new program, but he's got his former coach there. He spent his whole career with him. And the other option is, does he want to be somewhere where he's going to win 7, 8, 9 games at least, I think, somewhere in that range, right, for 2025, go to a bowl game, play on national TV almost every single week. Wake Forest ain't going to be on national TV every single week. Assuming that he does come and he's your starting right tackle, that gives Brock Knudsen, Grant Brix, and a handful of other guys another year to develop. That keeps you away from what we were talking about a little bit ago, where you're putting these younger guys into positions where they have to play significant, meaningful snaps when they're super young. So it gives Brock, it gives Grant an extra year to develop. Now, Grant Brix has been listed at left guard on the bowl game depth chart. So I'm wondering if that's a permanent switch or are they just kind of waiting to see how things change. There's two guys who redshirted last season that I wouldn't be shocked if they were on the two deep starting in 2025. There was some reporting that they were performing at the level to be on the two deep last season, but they were going to redshirt anyways, so they didn't actually show up on the two deep. They just kept practicing, developing, working on the scout team. And those guys are Preston Taumua from Hawaii. He was the #1 player in Hawaii. And then we have Gibson Pyle from Texas. Both were consensus 4-star recruits, Army All-Americans, Polynesian Bowl All-Americans, you name it. Highly sought after. Those are two guys that are a part of an elite offensive line class that Coach Donovan Raiola brought in last season. But I'd say those are the two guys that stand out the most, at least from the reporting that I've seen. Jake Peters has been someone that's been mentioned, but I believe he suffered a season-ending knee injury in fall camp, so I'm not sure if he'll be ready come spring ball. Now on to the running backs. The running game was solid during the bowl game. Like we mentioned, 5.33 yards per carry. Awesome job by the O-line and the running backs. Emmett Johnson and Ramir Johnson combined for 24 carries and 128 yards. We're going to take that all day long. 5 yards per carry. That's a first down every 2 plays. And if you're like me, you're a little bit old school in the sense of run the damn ball guy. That's not going to be the Nebraska offense anymore, ever, under Dana Holgorsen. They're going to be a pass-first offense. Now you're thinking pass-first, oh my gosh, air raid. He comes from the Mike Leach air raid tree. That's not going to happen. Zero chance that happens. He comes from the system of Mike Leach, which is the air raid, but he does not run the air raid, and he's not going to do it at Nebraska, especially with Matt Rhule as the head coach. That'll never happen, so don't panic. The only way we're throwing it 40 or 50 times a game is when we're getting our asses beat, and that's not going to happen often. They are going to be a pass-first team. They're going to throw it 25 to 35 times a game, and they're going to run the ball 20 to 30 times a game. It's going to be balanced enough where teams can't sit back in coverage or they can't bring anybody up to clog the box. It's going to be balanced enough. And as we talked about yesterday too, it's going to be a quick passing game, get the ball to guys in space, and then this is where Emmett Johnson excels at, catching the ball out of the backfield. Outside of Emmett Johnson, though, the running back room is a huge concern for me going into 2025. I'm not sure what we really have other than Emmett Johnson. We've got some guys coming in, which we're going to get to here in a little bit. But who do we have currently on the roster that can be a great accent to Emmett Johnson, a good thunder to the lightning? There's one guy on that roster. It's Quentin Ives. He's been at Nebraska for 2 years. We've seen very limited action from him. And running back's a position, of all the positions on the field, is the easiest one to get on the field early and show what you can do early. We saw it with Amir Abdullah. We saw it with Rex Burkhead. We saw it with Roy Halou Jr. You'll throw it back to Brandon Jackson. He was really good his freshman year. We saw Marlon Lucky. Granted, he was a 5-star. But there's a consistent track record of running backs, not just at Nebraska, but nationally, coming in as a true freshman and making impacts in the game. They all might not be starters, but they are all guys that are getting a couple touches a game, or more than a couple touches a game, honestly. They're guys that are in the rotation. They're in the 1, 2, 3-man rotation at running back. Quentin has not done that at Nebraska, and that's why I'm not 100% certain that he's the guy that's going to be the thunder to Emmett Johnson's lightning. On top of that, he's 6'3". He's an awfully tall running back, which is fine if you're Derrick Henry, but he's not Derrick Henry. He's also substantially smaller than Derrick Henry. He's 210 pounds probably, maybe 215. Derrick Henry's 245. So if he's going to be a running back, he's got to find a role. What could his role be? The power back. Put 15 pounds on in the offseason and define that role. You're going to be our guy to go to, because right now I don't think we have another option at running back outside of Emmett Johnson. And that includes Mekhi Nelson, who was a late enrollee last season. He redshirted, obviously. He came in right before fall camp, so he didn't have a lot of time to really get acclimated to the system, to add the weight he needs, but he's not going to be a big power back. He's 5'10", 190 pounds. So really our only option right now is Quentin Ives. Nebraska has to go find a power back from the portal. With Dante leaving, you're losing 12 touchdowns. Okay. Emmett Johnson could be great for the red zone in terms of short yardage situations. But I think you still need to have a legit guy that can go in and get you 2 yards. I heard an interesting stat from Sean Callahan the other day, where in short yardage situations, Dante Dowdell had the ball 28 times. He converted 26 times. That's an elite percentage for converting short yardage situations. Who do we have right now? I don't think we have anybody. Jamarian Parker and Connor Booth are the running backs for the 2025 class. So they're incoming guys from the high school ranks. Jamarian Parker is a 4-star, consensus 4-star. He's like a top 200 recruit nationally. Was committed to Arkansas, flipped his commitment to Nebraska, and signed with Nebraska in December. He's similar to Emmett Johnson, though, in terms of his size. He's 5'10", 5'11", maybe, depending on which service you're looking at. He's about 180 to 190 pounds. He's not going to be that bruiser. Connor Booth, on the other hand, could be your bruiser back. Granted, he is coming off knee surgery that he had after the state championship game, but he's a guy that reminds me of Rex Burkhead. He's 5'11", 6 foot. He's 210 to 220 pounds. Again, it just depends on which recruiting service you're using. He's not going to be a guy that breaks away and runs 40 yards down the field, but he's not going to be a guy that goes down after one hit. He's going to be a guy that's just steady, does his job. Rex Burkhead was an elite running back, obviously, so I'm not trying to say he's going to even be remotely close to Rex Burkhead, but there's similar things about their game that are making me excited about Connor Booth. It's just going to depend on how he comes back from his knee injury. He's arguably, we'll say, respectively top 5 running backs in terms of production in Nebraska high school football history. He was second nationally this season for running back and rushing yards, second in the whole United States. So obviously the kid's got some skill. Played C2 Nebraska high school football, though. It's a big step up from that to go to the Big Ten. So we'll see how he adjusts to the speed of the game, but I think he'll be perfectly fine. It's just a matter of getting that knee healthy, because he waited until the end of the football season after a state title to have that surgery. So to wrap things up here, the big concern for me is the offensive line. We got to find that bookend right tackle to anchor down the right side of that offensive line. You may add a guy from the portal for the interior side as well. But overall, I think the offensive line's in a better shape than it's led to believe. The right tackle is really the big concern for me. Can we see that year-over-year development that we've been seeing from Coach Raiola going into, I believe, his 4th season with Nebraska? So can we see that year-over-year jump we've been getting? Because I think he is a really solid offensive line coach. It's just taken some time to get his guys in, to get them developed, because we can't forget how atrocious that offensive line was when he started. And then the bruiser running back. Who's going to be that guy they go find from the portal? You got to find somebody that's going to come in and understand, okay, Emmett Johnson's the guy. I'm going to be the short yardage situation, goal to go situation. I'm going to get 5 to 10 touches a game, and Emmett Johnson's going to take it from there. The other wild card is Jamarian Parker. I am really high on Jamarian Parker. I think your top 3 running backs realistically going into next season, Emmett Johnson, Jamarian Parker, and whoever this mysterious bruiser running back is going to be for us. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for joining the Cornhusker Huddle.